Good morning, everyone, and welcome to It's All About Relationships Engaging Your Employees digital event. My name is Mel, and I'm events coordinator here at CMI. I'll shortly be handing over to David, who's running the session today. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be shared with you later on today. Now over to David, resident core skills expert at the Chartered Management Institute.
Thanks, Mel, and good morning, everybody, from a very snowy East Anglia. I hope you're all staying warm and safe wherever you are today. I want to talk about engaging your employees today, and I want to look at the organisation as a whole. Quite a lot to do within 30 minutes, but we'll see what we can cover and give you an idea of the things that you want to think about when you're engaging your employees to make sure that you're getting the best out of people that you can. This works really on an organisational basis and on a team basis. So if you're responsible for a team, hopefully you'll be able to get something out of today that will help you to engage with your team better as well as your employees as a whole. So first of all, we need to think about why. Why would we engage with employees? Why don't we just pay people to do a job, expect them to do it and get on with it? Why do we need to think about engaging our employees? Well, there's a number of reasons, and engaged employees perform a lot better. If you think about yourself, how engaged are you with the organisation that you work for? How engaged are you with the team that you work for? And how does that affect you in terms of your performance and your productivity? And it's very easy sometimes to forget that we're part of this. You know, I've been in meetings where people say, oh, what we need to do for them is, or what we need to do for this is. And I say to people, well, what are we doing for ourselves? Because we're all part of this organisation. It's not the management and us. It's not them and us. It's you know, those days are long gone. We need to work as a whole cooperative in order to make things work better. So engage with people because it improves their performance. It improves their productivity. It improves our productivity as an organisation. We score better on things like well-being, health and fitness, things like turnover and churn, sickness, absence, all those things. If we are working with engaged colleagues, we are more innovative. We come up with better ideas because we're thinking about our core group. We're thinking about something outside of ourselves. We're not just turning up for the money. We're thinking about why we do this, how we're going to improve it, how we're going to do this better as a team, how we can improve our relationships with our team, how we can improve our relationships with our colleagues, because we're all aiming at that same goal. An external of the team, an external of the organisation, engaged employees also improve customer relations because the relationship is then between us and the customer, or me and the customer, but me and the wider organisation. And I'm a representative for the organisation, and I want the organisation to be the best organisation possible. And I want your interaction as a customer to be the best interaction you can possibly have, and walk away from that interaction thinking, yeah, they're a really good organisation to deal with. That all comes from engaging your employees. If you have disengaged employees, you will lose all of those benefits. So we need to work hard to get people engaged and get them on side with us and get them to help us achieve what we want to achieve. But before you can do any of that, you need to take a look at where you are now. And we all think about these are standard things, aren't they? But where are our weaknesses? Where are our choke points? Where are things being held up in the process in order that we're engaging with people? Are we talking to people properly? Do people clearly know what it is we're trying to achieve? What is our goals? What are our visions? Or are we working in silos? Are we working in different parts of the organisation, not thinking about what's upstream and downstream from our little team? Now, a really good way to think about this is a few years ago, we used to talk about something called Total Quality Management, TQM. And TQM was like a lot of these kite marks, was a really good thing to do. But one of the things that came out of it for me personally was to think about your customers upstream and downstream within your organisation, as well as outside of your organisation. And this is really helpful when we're engaging employees, because we can start to explain and understand what happens if I don't do my bit properly. What happens if you don't do your bit properly downstream from me? And I just accept that and I take that on and I say, that's okay, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. I'll sort it out. And then because of that, I'm stopped from doing something I should be doing, And my customers further upstream are struggling as well. So we lose that engagement piece because we're all fighting against each other, however subconsciously that might be. We start to sit and we think, well, I can't stand the thought of something coming upstream from that department and I've got to deal with. I know it's not going to be right. I know it's not going to be where I need it to be, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to deal with it. That is a way of disengaging people subconsciously. So we need to think about how our internal customer relationships are going, as well as our external customer relationships. Just as if we work in an environment, potentially like public transport, let's say, and you go to work every day in the public transport and all you get is abuse and all you get is complaints and criticisms and, as I say, abuse hurled at you. It's very, very easy to disengage. So we need to think about all those relationships and how our teams, how our colleagues, and how ourselves are being impacted by all of that. So that's what we mean when we think about our weaknesses and our strengths. How do we support people through those difficult times? Because if we can't support them when it's difficult, we will disengage them. And once they're disengaged, it's very hard to get them back. Think about your own position that you've been in the past. If you've been in an organization where you're disengaged, it's very easy to start spending a lot of energy and a lot of effort trying to get out of that organization, trying to get another job. Very easy to do that once you're disengaged. It's much harder if you're fully engaged in an organization. So again, another reason why we want to keep people engaged. We need to think about how we engage with the whole organization, and this includes everybody in the organization. So we're thinking about demography here. We're thinking about, are we touching base with the whole range of people, whether that be gender, whether that be race, whether it be religion, whether it be age, whatever that relationship might be. Are we giving messages that are suitable for everybody? Now I say that, but we have to be really careful here because one message isn't going to touch everybody in the same way. So we need to think about our employee voice, how we're getting those messages across. How do people want to hear those messages? And it's going to be very different for different groups. We need to keep the message the same, but the medium will change. We might be sending things like emails, we might be doing newsletters, we might be phoning people up, we might be having brainstorming sessions, whatever it takes to make sure that everybody knows exactly what we're trying to do. We need to empower our leadership and engage with our managers in order that they have the responsibility to take this on. Now, that sounds like a really silly thing to say, doesn't it? Because, well, managers are empowered, aren't they? Because that's being a manager. But often that's not the case. Often what we see is micromanagement and too much control coming down from the top, or sometimes too much control in the middle that's focusing out those messages from the top and stopping those messages getting through. So we need to think about how we're working with the whole organization. Is it working effectively at each level, or have we got a silo in a particular level that we need to break down, and we need to share that responsibility and share that engagement across the piece? We need to make sure that as an organization or a team, we're acting with integrity. And people can trust us. So we say something, we follow it up. We say we're going to do something, we do it. And if we can't do it, and if we can't follow it up, we go back to them and we say, we're not going to be able to do this today, we're not going to be able to do this next week like we said we would, but we are going to be able to do it soon, and we need your help. So we're engaging, we're being clear, we're being transparent. We don't have all the answers, and we're not making out we have all the answers. We're asking for support, we're asking for information from our colleagues. Now, sometimes when you do that, you'll get somebody in the organization says, you know what, you get the big money, you tell me what I need to do. It's not my job to give you ideas. To which I would say, this is your organization as much as it is mine. This is an organization you chose to work for. I want to help you make this a better place to work. In order to do that, I need to understand what you need from me to make this a better place for you to work. You're right, I do get more money than you. I have a higher power than you. I have a level of responsibility that's above yours. But I can't do all this without your input. So I need you to tell me what you want. So we're getting people much more engaged like that. We also need to share knowledge. Now, we've talked about knowledge before as a form of power. And when we're thinking about knowledge, we can hold on to knowledge. In the old days, people used to hold on to knowledge. I'm the expert. You need to come to me because I can give you the answers you want. Those days are gone. We need to be sharing information, sharing knowledge, sharing that sense of power throughout the organization. And again, if you do that, that would encourage that engagement with your teams, with your staff, because it builds trust. demonstrates integrity, demonstrates you're part of this, and we all want to win together. We need to be seen as managers and leaders as well. We need to be that clear and consistent communication that I've talked about. We need to be working to the same end. We don't have hidden agendas anymore. Those days are gone. If you're in an organization where there's lots of hidden agendas, I would suggest you question why you're there. And if you're holding a hidden agenda, I would suggest you question why you're holding that hidden agenda. What is the purpose? What's the benefit of that? Or are you just holding rocks to throw at people when you get the opportunity? That's not a healthy place to be. That's not a confident or safe place to be. So if you find yourself in that situation, on either side of that equation, I would ask yourself a few questions about why you're there and what you're doing about it. If we have rules and processes, and you see this a lot, processes, procedures, rules in an organization, everybody in that organization needs to follow them. Otherwise, they're not processes and rules. Otherwise, they are limits for people and not rules and processes and procedures for everybody. So whatever level you are in the organization, whatever level you are in the team, you need to make sure that you're following those rules, processes, and procedures. If you don't, you'll disengage people. Because why should I do it if you don't? You're in charge of the team. You're not following the rules. Why the hell should I? And secretly, subconsciously, in people's minds, they will be thinking, what else are you not doing that you're making me do? How much more disengaged are we from each other because I now can't trust you? So we need to be very clear about our transparency when we're leading teams and leading organizations. We need, as leaders and managers, to demonstrate that we own the values of the organization. We need to demonstrate those values every day, and we need to demonstrate that we value our people. We value the processes they follow. We value the work that they do. And we're out and about with them, and we're engaging with them on a daily basis. And this doesn't have to be in depth. This doesn't have to be too deep. This can be as simple as how are you doing? What did you do at the weekend? But if you do that, make sure you do it genuinely. Make sure you do it with a sense of authenticity. Don't say to somebody, how are you, and walk off, or look at your watch or check your phone because you're too busy and you're just ticking off lists on a box, ticking box on a list rather. So think about why you're engaging, what you're trying to achieve from it. Be authentic, be genuine. If you haven't got time, do it later, but make sure you do it. Get around the office every day, get around the factory every day. Your team, go and see them every day, even if it's just a touch base. What do you think of the football? Did you see that cake on Bake Off? Whatever it might be, whatever engages with people with authenticity. Think about the role that people play in your team and your organization. Think about how you recognize what people do and recognize that everybody has a part to play. Now, I used to be a director in an education department for a local council. And I used to have to go and visit schools and meet with headmasters and various other people. And one of the things that I always used to focus on was meeting the caretaker. Now, in my mind, the caretaker was the most important person in that organization because I could go and see the head, and I could go and see senior teachers, and they would say, yeah, we can do this and we can do that and we can do the other. But if you don't have a relationship with the caretaker, you can be stuck because the caretaker opens the doors. The caretaker makes sure the classrooms are ready. The caretaker makes sure the hall is ready. The chairs are out, the tables are out, whatever it might be. The caretaker, you might say, is the person with the power in a school organization. If you move that to your organization, think about how you engage all the people in your organization. Some of them you may not have expected to engage with, but think about how you do that, because again, that will build trust, that will build clarity, and that will build values and visions as well for everybody. So we need to have that open working relationship with our team members. That trust will enable them to come to you and you to go to them and have various discussions about various things. But make sure that when you are communicating with them, it's clear. So it's clear that they know what they're supposed to be doing. It's clear that they know when they're supposed to be doing it, what kind of quality they're supposed to be doing it to. Again, if you're not consistent and clear with this engages people. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know why. Why do I need to have this done by Friday? I can't see the benefit of that. Why can't I do it next Tuesday? Why do I have to put that extra time in and do it to a different quality? Surely this is good enough. So explain to people why they're doing what they're doing, to what quality they're doing it. What are the implications if they don't do it? And remember, as a manager or a team leader, your role is to facilitate their success. Empower that team, empower them to do the best that they can do, and that will pay back dividends as well. We need to give feedback to people, and we need to do this properly. We need to give people genuine, authentic feedback when they do a good job. And equally, we need to give them genuine, authentic feedback when they do a poor job or they perform poorly. Now, that's really important, because if we ignore that, it will fester and it will not go away. If we ignore poor performance, it will become the norm. It's what's known as the broken window syndrome. For those of you that are not familiar with that, very quickly, if you live in an area and there are broken windows in buildings and the broken windows aren't quickly fixed, very quickly all the windows in that building are likely to become broken. And then that effect spreads out to other buildings. And then very quickly the area deteriorates terribly and people avoid living there. Crime increases, litter increases, all sorts of antisocial problems increase just because a window wasn't fixed. You can trace it back to something as simple as that. So when you're working with your teams, if you ignore things that you know you should address but feel uncomfortable about, that becomes the norm. That will grow. You will disengage your team and you're back to square one again. And it's much harder to come back once you've lost that. We need to recognize when somebody's done a good job, and we need to publicly recognize that within the team. Now, we don't publicly recognize poor performance, but we still deal with it. Now, I hope that's I've made a point about that. But we recognize public performance, we recognize poor performance, but we recognize it in a different way. We're not going to name and shame and blame. That's not on, that's not acceptable. And those days have long gone. But where there is performance issues, we need to make sure that we're coaching people, training people, developing them, giving them an opportunity to improve. And as part of that, we need to ask ourselves the question, have I been really clear about what it is I need you to do? Have I been clear and transparent about why I need you to do it, when I need you to do it, or am I setting you up to fail? So we have a part in that as well when we're addressing poor performance. We need to communicate, and I've talked about this already, but we need to make sure that we communicate in ways that are good for everybody. We need to think about all of our stakeholders and think about everybody who needs to be communicated with. And as we've talked about in communication webinars before, we need to make sure that we're listening to what our workforce and listening to what our customers are telling us as well. Because communication isn't just about telling, it's about hearing what other people are saying about us, about our organization, the way we work, the way we engage, the way we do business internally and externally. And that's going to include staff councils, trade unions, customers, partners, stakeholders, anybody who we need to tell. And as I always say, tell everybody everything unless there's a really good reason not to. And think about what that good reason not to might be before you just say, oh no, I'm not going to tell you, there's a reason I'm not going to tell you. Think about why you're not going to tell people and what are the consequences of telling them or not telling them. Think about that very clearly when you communicate. Because again, if you get it wrong, very easy to disengage. Think about what the other side of that message is as well. As from the last webinar we did, think about what I'm not saying by saying this. Very, very important to get it right. Ensure that your team have a good work-life balance. And remember that the road goes two ways here. It's not all about flexibility being a case of saying, well, we do have flexibility because you work whenever I need you to. That's not flexibility. Make sure little things like people don't take work home with them, people don't answer their phones at the weekend, people are turning their phones off. There was a thing in France last year, I think it was, where it became illegal to phone your employees outside of work hours. And just think about that for a moment. That seems quite draconian, quite overpowering, but think about the benefit of that. And think about just stopping and saying to yourself, if I couldn't phone you, if I couldn't email you outside of your work hours, what would I do? How would I get the message across to you? Can it wait till another day? Think about those things when you're thinking about that, because that affects people's work-life balance. Lots of people nowadays, even outside work, will have their emails on their personal phone. And we can't stop them doing that easily. I mean, we could do, but we don't want to be that draconian about it. But think about if that's the case, and you're sitting at your desk and you're thinking, I've got loads of things to do Monday morning, so I'm just going to fire off these emails now. 9 o'clock Sunday night, I'm working because I want to get ahead for Monday morning. I'm going to send these emails off, bang. What's the impact of that at the other end? Somebody sees that on their phone, they're not going to ignore it. You can't not see something. You can't unring that bell. Think about the impact that's going to have. Is that going to disengage people? Are your team going to be sitting there watching a film on a Sunday night going, oh, God's sake, why can't this wait till the morning? Just think about what it is you're doing and how that helps that work-life balance and how that helps engagement with your staff. Don't make assumptions about what's good for your staff. Ask them what they want. Engage with them and say, look, we're thinking about work-life balance. We're thinking about flexible working. How would that look for you? What would that look like for you? How would that benefit you? Because some people will give you a very different answer to other people, and we need to take all that on board. And we don't want to make assumptions about what works for people just because it works for us. There's a stop point here as well. I just want to say this: when we think about other people, it's really hard to think of them not like us, because that's all we know. All we know is how we see life, how we experience life, and how we reflect on life. It's very easy to think other people think of it the same way as us. So we ask them, we find out what's going on, we're engaging with them by asking them, we're building that trust, we're building that relationship, we're building that holistic approach to work for everybody. All of this is part of demonstrating trust, and it doesn't just happen when we demonstrate trust. And we need to demonstrate trust in other people in order that they trust us. We need to follow through with everything we said we're going to do. Remember, your job is facilitating and not controlling. We need to train people to do the jobs that we've put them in, whether they be supervisors, team managers, specialists, whatever it might be. We need to make sure people have all the training they need and are very clear about what it is that they're trying to achieve, why and when, and how that impacts on the rest of the team and the rest of the organization. We need to think about people's personal incentives. Why do people come to work? It might be money, but it might not. It might be other things as well. So think about that. Try and get under the skin of why people are coming to work, because that will help with your engagement as well. Talked about recognition, and we need to recognize when people do a good job. And we need to recognize that as part of the team, as well as recognizing the individual. And it's important to remember that no one wins unless everyone wins. So that sounds really trite and cheesy, and you might think that's the case, and that's fine. That's your interpretation of it. For me, what it means is we're a team. The team wins. We recognize an individual success in that, but the team wins. And as the team leader, supervisor, manager, I have a part to play in that, but it's not my win. I only win if my team win. If I win on my own and my team loses, I've done something seriously wrong. I have disengaged. They do not trust me. That relationship is broken down beyond repair sometimes. So we need to think about that. This is not about us. This is about the whole team and recognizing everybody's part they play in it. When we're thinking about training, we need to think about how we develop our people. We need to identify what training we need for them. We don't want to sheep dip them. We need to make sure that any training and support they receive is pertinent to them and tailored for their needs and what we need them to do for the business. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in the next webinar that we've got coming up in a fortnight's time, all about training staff. So I'm not going to go into this too much detail today. But if we're training people, we need to think about why we're training them, how will it be different, why are we training them, what will be different for them, what will be better for them at the end of that process, because that's a way of engaging people in training. The worst thing you can do is just go, all right, Bob, Sue, you're on training on Monday. It's going to be an all-day course. What's it about? Oh, well, I don't really know, but they'll tell you when you get there. We've all seen that. We've all seen that fail. So let's not fall into that trap. We need to tell people why. Is this something you want to do? Or the rest of it. I'll go into that in a lot more detail in a fortnight's time. When we're developing people and we're developing the organization and the team, we need to think about the environment as well, the environment they're working on. The worst thing you can do is try to develop people, try to engage with them, and then put them in a horrible environment. So we need to make sure the environment is appropriate. There's lots of natural light. It's clean. It's fresh. Think about the little things. I always have this personal thing where I always judge an organization or a company or whatever it is by the quality of their hand dryers. Now, you go into a toilet, you go into a kitchen or whatever it is, and there's always a hand dryer these days. Very rarely is there paper towels, but there's always a hand dryer. And sometimes the hand dryer is really good and it makes a good job, and people say, you can say, well, obviously they care because they've put in a hand dryer that works. You go into other organizations and the hand dryer basically goes, and you stand there for 10 minutes and you come out with wet hands. For me, it's little things like that say, you don't really care. You're doing this because you can tick a box on a sheet that says, got a hand dryer, yeah, works every day, yeah. Doesn't really work. It works in the sense it's blowing lukewarm air at you, but it's not drying your hands. So think about the little things about the environment that work for people, that help people to do the best job they can for you, to be fully engaged, to trust, to be productive, to perform well. Think about the environment. Again, think about the demography of your team. Think about what works for various people. Now, I've been in organizations where you have hot desking, for example, and people have to clear their desks at the end of the day. For some people that works because I can work anywhere. Just grab my laptop, sit in any available desk, and I can work. There are people within every team that for them, that would be an absolute nightmare. Now, we can have clear desk policies, but we still need to allow and enable people who really need to be able to do that nesting, to be able to put a picture of their spouse or their grandchildren or whatever it is on the top, to have their little cuddly toy, because that's what helps them work. We can say you have to clear it all off every night, that's fine, but allow them to have what they need around them to help them work, whether that's pictures on the wall, whether it's things on the desk, whether it's different kind of chairs, whether it's breakout areas, whatever you can facilitate to help that productivity and that engagement will pay dividends in the long run. Think about your culture, and remember that as a manager and a leader, it's easy to see yourself as outside of the culture, but you are the culture. Remember that you are the culture. And if you've been there for 10, 15 years, you are very much the culture. People look to you to see how to behave. And that's really important to remember that. So think about, what is the culture? I am the culture. I am the representative of this organization that you see every single day of the week when you come to the office. Remember that. Encourage some team building activities, but remember that not everybody will want to get involved in that. Not everybody likes bowling. Not everybody likes a quiz. Not everybody wants to stand up in karaoke. Not everybody drinks. Not everybody will want to go to the pub. Think about the different groups in your organization. Think about any activity that you suggest and how it's going to affect that particular group. Because we don't want to disengage people. We don't want to disadvantage people. We don't want to unconsciously exclude people. So think about that. Have your meetings, ask what people want to do, and allow people not to take part if that's what they want to do. As long as it's their choice, that's fine. If it's you excluding them, that's completely wrong and unacceptable. So think about that. Think about how you celebrate things within the culture. Think about how you celebrate and promote the culture itself and support the culture. One of the things a lot of people do now is allow volunteering outside of the workplace, within work time. And again, this pays back dividends because it builds your organization into the community, recognizes your organization into the community. And if you get it right, you can't buy publicity like that. You know, that's a fantastic thing to do. It builds morale, builds connections, encourages customers, builds relationships, builds reputation. It's a fantastic thing to do. Recognize not everybody can do it, not everybody can afford to do it, but if you can, it's something I would really suggest you think about very, very, very carefully. Now, before I finish, there are loads of things on Management Direct that you can access for information about engaging with your team, engaging with your colleagues. I would suggest you have a look at that. If you can't access Management Direct, I would suggest thinking about joining up in one of our different levels of membership in order that you can access all the great stuff that's on Management Direct. And a couple of things I want you to think about before we go. Things to avoid. Don't be dictatorial. Don't be over-controlling. You'll break the culture. Don't micromanage. You will disengage people quicker than anything if you micromanage people. Understand that don't underestimate the potential of your team members. Don't assume that because you have a higher position, you have all the knowledge and ability. Don't write checks that you can't cash. Don't fail to follow up on promises. If you promise to do something, do it, or go back to people and tell them why you can't do it. Not everybody can finish what they say, but go back and say why, because that will build trust, that will build engagement. Don't ignore poor performance. You know, the thing about it's just, oh, that's just Bob, Bob's always like that. That's not acceptable, because that just tells everybody else that's okay. Why should I work hard and Bob gets away with it? So avoid all those things. And some final things for you to take away: be as human as possible. And that sounds like, the thing I say all the time, and I mean it all the time. Be as human as possible, especially now when we're not seeing people face to face. Be the best human that you can possibly be. Everybody is suffering. Everybody is challenged. Recognize that that's the same for everybody else as it is for you. It's all about relationships. Build those relationships. Engage people through relationships. Demonstrate trust. Demonstrate your values and the company values. Have a clear goal and a clear vision that people can get behind, and keep promoting that goal and vision. It's not enough to say it once. Keep going with it. Remember where you're asking people to work. Is it suitable for them? Is it the best environment for them? Even if it's a little micro bubble within an open office, if that gets them to be productive, to be happy, to be satisfied, to be engaged, do it for them. Make sure you talk to all the people, and I mean all the people, from the bottom of the organization to the very top of the organization. Make sure you engage with everybody, and make sure you listen to all your people as well. So that's all from me. I'm going to hand back to Mel, because I think we might have some questions, and I hope that's been really useful for everybody.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David. So I'll start with the pre-submitted questions that we've had through. The first one that has come through is: my staff will soon be returning to the office, hopefully permanently, after being separated throughout the majority of 2020. Any advice for the return?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think this is going to affect a lot of people. I would tend to start to treat them in a way as if they were a new team. So I would think about that forming, storming, norming, and performing, and think about allowing them to storm. They're going to be trying to get back together as a team. They're going to be building those relationships as if they were a new team. Allow for them to have catch-up periods. Allow for productivity to slip and drop a bit. Allow them to get friendly again. Allow them to come together and, in a sense, grieve. Don't forget they would have been stuck at home, so there'd be no commuting. So for a lot of people that will be a benefit. Suddenly they've lost that benefit. They've got to come back into the office. You've got to think about all the things like travel, like parking, like petrol, extra expense, all the things that they've got used to over the last 3 months, 6 months, year, however long they've been working at home. And allow them to build again from the ground. Now, you might see some interesting things come out of that. People who may have had a different level of hierarchy within a non-hierarchical team, just because that's how people are, may not come back in the same position. So you may see positions change, and there will be a jockeying for position quite naturally. So allow that to happen, expect that to happen, facilitate it. Most of all, talk to them, welcome them back. What can you do to help them resettle in? Treat them as new employees, onboard them, if you like, in a different kind of way. So we're not covering all the basics. This is how you work here. This is where the cloakings are, all that kind of stuff. But think about them as a new member of the team. Build a new team.
Great. The second one that has come in is maintaining relationships with colleagues who are aware of disrupting the culture when you're not around.
I'm thinking this. I'm taking your question as somebody, as perhaps a team leader and a member of their team is not behaving when you're not there. I'm going to take it from that point of view.
Yeah.
If you know that's the case, you need to challenge them. That's not acceptable, and you need to talk to them. Try and understand why they're behaving that way. Try and figure out what's going on for them. Why do they feel it's necessary to behave this way? Why do they feel it's necessary to behave different when you're there than when you're not there? And help them get to a point where they can understand that and stop that behavior. But you do need to challenge it. If you know it's going on and you don't do anything about it, you're saying that's acceptable, remember. And that's clearly not acceptable, otherwise you wouldn't have raised the question. So difficult conversation to be had. Think about what it is you want to achieve from that conversation. Think about why you're having that conversation, but do have it, and have it soon.
Excellent. And the next one that's come in is how you rebuild staff from constant management changeover.
Yeah, this is a difficult one as well. And you see this in a lot of organizations where sometimes there isn't a clear vision and there isn't engagement. So the management have left or the management have been replaced for whatever reason that might be. This is a big challenge, and all I would do is focus on a few things that you can achieve. So I would focus on getting the team to work as a team. How do we work irrespective of the manager? So what are the company values? What are the team's values? What are the goals and objectives that team needs to achieve? And can we achieve those as a collective without the manager? Remember, the manager is not there to dictate what is going on. The manager there is to facilitate your good performance and your ability to succeed. So can you do that as a collective without the manager? If you can, that's good. That's not to say the manager isn't needed, because apart from facilitating, they're there to support you. So think about how you're going to support each other. But I would look at the team first, and then the manager almost in that instance as an add-on, as and when they're available. But also think about, if they're not available, who can you go to with issues? Who can you go to for support? Who can you go to when it's all going horribly wrong? And that might be HR, that might be another manager, that might be a peer or a mentor in another department. But have that in mind, and not bypass the manager. Try and think about how you would work if they weren't there. Now, a good way to think about this is, if your manager got sick yesterday and had to have 3 weeks off, what would you do? If you ask yourself that question, you probably can come up with a much clearer answer for how you can deal with the constant change of managers. But it's not easy.
No. Perfect. And the last pre-submitted is, working in a startup has been a challenging journey, as it is a path of self-discovery. What are your practical steps to induce self-awareness in employees for them to inform of my faults?
I think, first of all, whoever submitted this question, congratulations for your startup. This is a really brave thing to do in this current environment, and I hope it's all going well for you. Firstly, I'm interested that you think you have faults, and you think you've got faults, but you're not dealing with them. You're not recognizing a way to handle those and deal with those. And I'd ask yourself the question why that is. Are they genuine faults? Do you feel you ought to have some faults? Or is fault perhaps the wrong language that you're using in order to deal with this issue that you have seen in yourself? What I would do in terms of engagement is, I would probably run a 360-degree feedback sessions, and I would get your team members to give you some honest and open feedback in order that you've got something that you can work on. Now, before you try to do that, you need to make sure that you've got an environment of trust with your team. Do your team trust you? Do your team trust that whatever they say will be received as positive, will be received as a gift of feedback rather than a criticism? Have you got somebody in mind who, once those 360 sheets come back to you, you can sit down with that person and say, help me understand how realistic this is. Help me understand that this is a gift and not just pure criticism about me as an individual. So there are a number of elements you want to think about there, but give your staff the option to do a 360 if you've got an environment of trust, and if you've got somebody who can sit with you and help you understand what that feedback is saying. Then the last part of that is, when you get the feedback, make sure you do something about it. Don't ask people's opinion if you're going to ignore it. So make sure that you know what you're going to do with it, what can you change, and talk to them as well. We did this exercise. This is the feedback that's coming back. This is what I think I'm going to do about it. And follow through. And if you can't follow through, what are you going to do? You're going to go back to them and say, I can't follow through now, but I'm going to work on this over this amount of time, and we're going to get this done together.
Excellent. We've also had some live comments through, so I will put them on the screen. We've had one from A65 Bill. What hope is there for managing multi-generational teams without effective engagement?
Sorry, Mel, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, sorry. What hope is there for managing multi-generational teams without effective engagement?
I think there is hope, and the hope is through effective engagement. That sounds like a throwback at you, but actually you need to think about all the things we've said today. Think about, how am I engaging with every group in that organization? And the engagement will be different for different groups. Think about how you're going to deal with ages, genders, race, creed, religion, all of those issues that we all know about. Think about how you're going to deal with those, how you're going to make sure that you engage with everybody in the best way possible. But it's not going to be a homogenized approach that's the same for everybody. So once you think about that, you can start to think about the effective management of that, and that will come back to you in spades as well. So it's all about the engagement. If we don't get that right, we're not going to effectively manage.
Perfect.
People, just going to add to that a second, if I may, Mel. Some people will say, well, yes, I can. I can effectively manage, because if they don't do what they're told, they're out. And you can do that for a very short space of time. That's a very old-fashioned way of thinking. You still see it in some situations, but you can do that and it will work, but it will work for a very, very limited amount of time, because people will not put up with it these days. Nobody should have ever had to put up with it. And certainly these days, nobody will put up with that. So it is all about engaging, talking to your staff. What can I do for you? What do you need from me in order that you can do this? Be very clear about what the this is.
Brilliant. We've had a question from Kirsten. Does the move to hot desking require different engagement techniques?
Yes. It's a simple answer. Yeah. And again, it's about talking to people. It's about saying, we're gonna start hot desking. But this is why we're going to start hot desking. This is the benefit. These are the benefits we think that hot desking will bring us. These are some of the potential downsides, and we can support you through that. But just be very open, clear, and human about it. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is why we're trying to achieve it. How can we make it work for you? How can you make it work for us now that you know where we're trying to go, where we're trying to be, and what it's going to look like after we've done this? So everybody's clear about what's happening.
Excellent. And question from Rujan. For remote working, what could be an ideal environment for the teams?
This is a really pertinent question. Thank you for this, Rujan. I think when we're thinking about dispersed teams, we need to think about it in a very different way. How do we come together? Maybe it's over Zoom, maybe it's over something like this, whatever medium it is. But again, what works for you as an individual? We're thinking about the individuals all the time in this, because without them, we don't have a team. Let's remember that. Without the individuals and without meeting their needs as best we can, that doesn't mean everything, but as best we can, we don't have a team. So we need to say to people, how are you best working? What can I do to facilitate you working from home at the moment? Have you got space for a small desk? Have you got space for a proper chair? Or are you working on your sofa? Are you sitting on the end of your bed with a laptop? If you are, then we need to think about how we can change that. What can we do in order that you can work in this way remotely and work in this way differently if you were working in an office before? If we're asking people to work remotely from scratch, so we take somebody on, this is a home-based job, we have a responsibility to them to make sure that the environment that we're asking them to work in is appropriate, is safe, meets health and safety requirements. And so we need to think about that as well. But again, asking what works for people, because giving everybody a desk to stick in a room that you perceive they may have isn't necessarily going to work. So you may have different desks for different people. You may have stand-up desks, you may have small tables, you may have office chairs, you may have operators' chairs, whatever it might be. We need to make sure that we're asking people to do things that are safe and secure.
Fantastic. So we've had quite a few questions, but I'm afraid that is it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and thank you, David, for sharing your knowledge with us. If you're a member of CMI or subscribe to our content, you can find thousands of exclusive development resources in Management Direct, like David's mentioned. To log into Management Direct, just visit our website. If you're not yet a CMI member, you can join our community to access to Management Direct via the link in the live chat comments. Please also sign up to our free CMI newsletter for the latest trends and tips for managers and leaders. I would like to wish you a great day, and thank you all again for your attention.
Thanks, everyone. Stay warm. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.